Well, this is Lee Macneil, and she's a lifelong resident of North Reading. She's recording secretary of the North Reading Garden Club, president of the New England Rose Society, a member of the New Hampshire Rose Society, and an American Rose Society judge. So she's pretty rosy, huh? She's a certified consultant rosarian, and I imagine that doesn't mean it with the church.
No, you just gotta take it to the council.
And an apprentice horticultural judge for the American Rose Society. She's the new owner, maybe for now about how long? October of the Good Day Flowers on Main Street in North Reading.
I got my business card prominently displayed here.
She is right across the street from?
There's a plaza there with Curio Salon and the stone, Spencer Granite, right next to the Big Dog.
Right next to the Big Dog. You remember that? So please visit her. She does a beautiful
I'm in the old aluminum age building, and the sign is still up because they have moved out and they're working out of the cellar. They store things, so he won't let me take the sign down, so nobody knows I'm there.
That's okay. Oh. Believe me, we know how to spread stories. So by the time they leave here, we'll be all over
Right
town.
now, in this economy, I need all the exposure I can get.
And she has also donated this beautiful display of yellow roses. Everyone has a ticket, and do not leave because at the end of her presentation, we will be picking a winner. So thank you for coming. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk about roses. I can always talk about roses because roses are something that I absolutely positively love. As you can probably tell, I get myself into all the clubs and everything. I like to stay busy. I grow a lot of roses in my yard. I live on Marblehead Street. I think I've got a neighbor here in the front row. I probably have around 260 rose bushes in my yard. They're spread out between my mother's yard and my yard. And I'm here today to tell you, I heard it already once. A lady was going out the door. I think her name was Lois, and I says, what's the matter? You don't like roses? And she says, oh, I like roses, but I can't grow them. And everywhere I go, I hear, I can't grow roses. And I'm like, geez, how come I can't? There's really nothing special to them. If you can grow echinacea, the coneflowers, or black-eyed Susan, or butterfly bushes, you can grow roses. They're really not, there's no real mystery to it. I'm here today to show you some little tricks that make them a little more accessible. A lot of people, when they go out to get roses, they'll go in the drugstore or someplace and see these like this. This is actually a little bigger one than a lot of times you'll find in the drugstore in a bag. And they're cheap. They don't cost much. But when they stuff them into these little bags, they chop off all the roots. So you're buying a handicapped plant, which if you want a challenge, that's, it's not bad. Because, I mean, I started with these. I've got some, they're probably 15 years old. They made it. But I'm going to just kind of, my mighty knife, I'm going to show you, if I can get into it, just what you're faced with when you take one of these out. Another thing I like to tell people too is these pots. They tell you you can plant a rose in these pots. Don't do it. They're handicapped enough. And putting them, trying to do this without making an awful mess, which is not always easy. I want to show you what these roots look like. Oh, I'm making a mess. Here we go. I am making a mess. Here we go. Wow. That's all there is. Wow. See? Yeah. And you'd say to yourself, I buy bare root roses, or I buy roses in 2-gallon pots, and the roots go right down to the bottom of this pot. So I'm starting with a plant that's got a lot more oomph to it, so to speak. These grow. I have fair luck with them, but you've got to know what you're getting into. And if I buy a rose like this, I'll take it home and I'll put it in a bucket and I'll soak it for a couple of days. And that helps. Then when I plant it, this is a grafted rose. What it means is this part of this bush is not the same as the top part. This, from here down, where this woody knob is a rose that is used strictly for rootstock. It's called Dr. Huey. It's a red rose with only about 5 petals. It only blooms once a year. So a lot of times people tell me, you know, I had a peace rose and it was a nice, beautiful yellow rose, and all of a sudden it turned red, and I don't know why. Well, what happened is the top part of your rose died right here, and the rootstock grew on. So the way to get around that in New England, don't listen to what they say on the planting instructions, because they tell you to leave this above the ground. You don't want to leave this above the ground. I put them 2 inches below the soil level. So when I take this home, I take it out of this awful little pot. I dig a real deep hole. I throw some composted cow manure into it. I spread out what little roots it has. And I sink it deep into the hole and put the soil right up 2 inches above this knobby bud union. Can everybody see that? I am making a terrible mess up here, but I'll clean it up afterwards. But that's something I wanted to show you. That gives you a good idea of what you're starting with. When you get a bare root rose like the ones you send away from the companies, and they'll arrive in the mail, they'll have roots this long. They're packaged like that. And those, you can even trim them a little bit. You can see that this poor guy is alive, because these white ones here are nice. You know, he's trying to put out some more roots so that he can get going. Enough of that. And when I plant them in the spring, I like to add a little Epsom salts to the composted cow manure when I plant them. The Epsom salts, what it does is it makes for a lot of these basal breaks, all these new growth little starts that come out of the canes. That's what it's almost like a spring tonic. Gets them going in the spring. About a quarter of a cup to a half a cup of this. I give it to my established roses in my yard too. I'll just go around and throw a handful. In the spring I give them this, and I give them 10-10-10 lawn fertilizer. I use whatever's cheap. You know, I'll use lawn fertilizer. I use tomato fertilizer, whatever I find on sale. And I give them a good shot of that. When you first plant a new rose, don't even bother with the fertilizer until it's been in the ground for a couple of weeks, because it's a waste. It just won't take it up. You can just give it a little of the Epsom salts is fine. Pruning time comes around in the spring. I don't prune in the fall at all. There's not really any point to it. It's they get broken in the winter. It doesn't harm them. The wind whips the canes around and breaks them. The more snow we have, the better off your roses are. The more snow cover that covers them up, it acts as insulation. Because that's what putting this below the ground level does, is it keeps this bud union from constantly freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing. It's better off to stay frozen. So that's why we put that down low. But then when the snow comes and the snow covers them, you'll actually have more live cane for the spring when you cut. And I do my pruning in the spring when the forsythia blooms. That's an easy way to remember when to do it, is when I see the yellow forsythia bushes blooming, that's time for me to cut my roses. And when I prune, I pitch a hand like this shape. This is how I want it to look. So I want it, you know, this ideally would have like another cane coming out of this side. So when I look at the bush, I want to cut to canes that are growing to the outside. You want a good spread to get more out of your rose bush. So when I prune this, I might take this off and just leave this one, because I don't need things growing in the middle of the bush. You want good air circulation that way. But you can, you know, a lot of people have like anxiety over pruning them. They like being pruned. The more you prune them, the more they grow. I cut my hybrid teas shorter than this. I'll cut them back to here sometimes. I've got pictures of after a bad winter, I've cut them down to like 3 inches. And within probably 6 to 8 weeks, they're this tall. They bloom the first year when you put them in the ground. All around, I love roses because they start flowering for me the end of May. Some of them, you know, open up earlier than others. They bloom from May up until Christmas. You know, if we're having a mild winter, I've still got some blooming out there right up until almost Christmas. Always past Halloween and Thanksgiving anyway. But what other perennial keeps going and gives you as much color in your yard? Probably one of the most important things when you're choosing roses is everybody likes, like the florist rose with the high center, you know, and that's a hybrid tea. Hybrid teas don't give you as much bang for your buck in your garden because they'll send up one nice pretty rose and then it takes a break and it sends up another nice pretty rose. I prefer, for garden aesthetics, shrub roses, floribundas, climbers, and miniature roses. They bloom almost constantly. I've got shrub roses that are in bloom all year. You know, there's flowers coming and going constantly. They don't take the break that the hybrid teas take. There are shrub roses that are fragrant. There are shrub roses that have better form than others. Some of them have fewer petals that look almost similar to a dogwood flower. A lot of people don't like them. They have a special beauty of their own, and I like them just because I can appreciate that simplicity of just having 4 or 5 petals. But I love to grow practically any type of rose there are. I have the hybrid teas because I like to show them in rose shows, and probably that was more common. Everybody used to always grow the hybrid teas to show them. Nowadays, there are more classes in the shows for shrubs, floribundas, and climbers. Climbers are very versatile, and they're usually very hardy. I grow climbers on a chain link fence of a dog yard. It makes it a lot prettier. It covers up the chain link. It looks nice even when it's not in bloom because it has pretty foliage and it covers the fence, which is not all that attractive. I have climbers that are not as tall growing on, like my mailbox. That's a smaller one. I have some miniature roses. When you think of miniature roses, you don't think of climbers, but there are some beautiful miniature climbers. They have very small flowers and very small leaves, yet they can grow to be 15 feet tall. And they're pretty interesting to grow on a trellis or a small arbor. I have other ones that I grow on a stone wall, and they kind of snake through the, there's that word again, snake. They kind of grow through the rocks, and it adds color to a stone wall. You know, roses like sun. It's very important to plant them in a sunny area.